Thank you, Heaven.
All right, good to see all of you today. Welcome to our virtual coffee with the principal session. Never thought we'd be saying that, but it is our ninth and our final of the school year. For those of you joining us for the first time, we'd ask that you keep your microphones on mute so we don't have too much feedback, but we are very interested and open to any questions that you may have. As we go through this session, if you have some questions, put them in the chat. If it's better to ask live, feel free to unmute yourself at that point and we can answer those questions. We'll answer all the questions that we can prior to finishing today. Some things we know, some things we speculate on, but we'll let you know what we know. As with our previous sessions, we'll put it up on YouTube for further viewing. But welcome all of you. It's good to see you. Happy Coffee with the Principal. Today is our last Coffee with the Principal of the year, and next week marks the last school week of the school year, with school officially ending on Thursday. As is typical of a last week of school, we have not had much by way of typical, but as is typical of our last week of school, we're busy and have a lot of things going on. So today my plan is to tell you a little bit about what the end of the school year looks like, kind of what events that we have going on, speculate a little bit about next, what our current thinking is, solicit from you as well. You'll notice that I did put a back to school survey in. If you haven't had a chance to take that yet, it's a survey to inform us on what you're thinking to that in just a moment. End of year, starting on Monday, we are collecting up devices that were loaned out. We loaned out, I have to check the numbers, 200 something Chromebooks, I believe, about 100 iPads, a lot of them went out. And we were really pleased that we were able to facilitate learning with some devices for folks that either didn't have enough devices, didn't have any devices. We were also able to get some grant funding to purchase hotspots for folks that needed them as well. So we were able to get computers and internet out to all of our students, which was a wonderful thing. And now over the summertime, you're welcome to use most of the Chromebooks. If you are having a student that's returning, you're welcome to keep those Chromebooks over the summer and use them for at-home learning. And we'll get what that at-home learning is. If you do want to return them though, we have a drop-off time that is going to be Monday from 10:30 to 12, and it'll be a drive-through, our drive-through library curbside service, so that you don't have to get out of your car. We keep everybody safe and can get those devices returned. We did have a lot of devices loaned out, iPads to our kindergarten and first grade students. We are requiring those devices come back. Couple reasons for that. One is our first grade using iPads moving into next year. They'll be moving into Chromebook to have those devices available for folks. And then the other piece of it is that a lot of our primary teachers were maybe a little bit less computer learning over the summer might be best. So if you do have an iPad out and you do want to keep it in the summer, we can work out some arrangements for that, but talk to Mrs. Lee. But otherwise, bring that back to us during through device return on Monday 10:30 to 12. Also next week, our teachers our elementary teachers have scheduled a drive-through goodbye. Typically year, it's filled with some parties and festivities and teachers providing some gifts and sending home some artwork and all that kind of stuff. And so our TK through fourth grade teachers are staging a good that is going to be on Wednesday. And to try to keep people spread apart as much as we can, we have scheduled that out. So if you have a child in the second grade, it's scheduled from 11:30 to 12:30. If you have a child in the third grade, it's 12:45 to 1:45. Fourth grade is from 2 to 3, and TK 3:15. So it's similar to our other drive-throughs. We have you guys stay in the car, make sure that everyone stays. That teachers have some parting words and maybe a few things to return to your students. So if you have a student in that TK through fourth grade, come join us during those times. I'm sure your teachers are communicating that out to you as well. My understanding is our 5th grade is going to visit some homes and have some special things along those ways. And we're going to do some similar stuff with our 8th graders. So that's kind of what the beginning part of next week is looking like. And then we have some really special things on our scheduled last day of school. Some really special things for 8th grade graduates. One of the big challenges that we've had throughout this process is that our 8th graders aren't getting the experience that 8th graders typically do, which is their traditional promotion ceremonies and the festivities that go with that. So we have looked to replicate best we can under current circumstances, many of those things for this Thursday. So we have scheduled at 8:30 this Thursday a graduate parade. Typically 8:30 on the last day of school, our 8th graders have an 8th grade breakfast. And so we have arranged for a drive-through breakfast for our 8th graders, as well as a parade, signs and music and all sorts of fun stuff. So if you have an 8th grader, show up in your cars. We're going to enter through the east gate over by the kindergarten, and the parade route will go through the center of campus. Unfortunately, we can't have spectators for the parade outside of staff due to gathering and social distancing restrictions. But if you want to participate in that parade, we encourage you to get in your car, decorate it, join us. So it should be fun, and we will be handing out breakfast to our 8th graders, as is our tradition. Another tradition we'll be doing on Thursday, the last day of school, is our senior or our 8th grade video. We've had wonderful parents throughout the year, and Mrs. Adams is picking up this year of compiling photographs of our children who are graduating 8th grade from their kindergarten year all the way up through their 8th grade year, and putting a slideshow together. And so I know she's got a ton of pictures, and we will be through Zoom on Thursday at 10 o'clock in the morning. So you'll have the parade that's at 8:30, and then it'll be time to get back to your residences, and we will stream it at 10 o'clock. And then that evening, we're scheduled for our promotion at 6 o'clock. And as you probably know, we can't have a promotion like we normally wanted to, so we have a virtual promotion planned. And all of our students have contributed, or most of our students have contributed some personal messages that'll be incorporated. That will stream at 6 o'clock through our YouTube channel. So anybody who wants to watch that, check it out. We're putting that event together and still holding out plans to bring our 8th graders back when it's safe to do so. So hopefully our 8th graders, when all said and done, will be honored as they should be, and also have a few more activities that other 8th graders have never had before. So that's kind of what our last week of school is looking like. And Friday, Mrs. Lee and I will be taking a trip out to those 8th graders' homes and delivering their diplomas and yard signs and awards and things that we would normally give to them during their promotion. So we'll end up doing that. The big question I keep getting from people is, okay, school year is going to end on Thursday, but what's next? If any of you out there know the answer to that, let me know, because I don't want you to keep it a secret. It's ever changing. Last week, you weren't allowed to get haircuts because it was too dangerous to get haircuts. This week, you can get haircuts, but you can't have your beard trimmed. Last week, you could walk on the beach, but you couldn't sit down. This week, you can sit down on the beach, but you can't play volleyball. Tomorrow, there'll be a new set of restrictions. The good news is that each time that these things come out, things become ever so slowly less rigorous and less restrictive. And I'm optimistic within the next 2.5 months, as these restrictions continue to drip out, we will be able to make some decisions on how we can operate school more effectively. Right now, we're pretty speculative. We've got lots of plans, contingency plans in place for different amounts of kids and different times of day, but it's really too early for us to know what the rules are going to be when we get there. Just yesterday, ACSA, which is the state's largest and most influential administrators group, they do a lot of political activism. They put out a 30-something page school reopening report. And what I liked about it, and it's very consistent with our thinking right now, is it puts public health and student and staff well-being at the top of that list, closely followed by teaching and learning, and what are the components of a child's education. But they link it to the fact that and this is within their call to action, that there needs to be adequate funding and then some program flexibilities. The state had been pretty good this year as far as making sure that schools continued to get funded and that we had flexibility in our programs in order to operate in a very different way than we've ever operated before. We're going to need that moving forward. And so their call to action on that really prioritized making sure that people are healthy and then making sure that kids are learning in a meaningful way, but at the same time saying we need the tools to do it. And so the kind of things that you'll see kind of shaping up as we kind of move through. Know that Mrs. Lee and I have become very well versed in a lot of the options and flexibilities and things that we can do. We've shared a number of those with you before. There's been some confusion when we start talking about flexible days and restrictions and home learning, that these are absolutes. There are some educational institutions right now, namely some larger college systems, that are putting some absolutes into place. They're talking about the fact that in the fall, it's going to be this. And most of it is coming from the most restrictive place. It is going to be an online learning environment, and we will open up in January. One of the benefits that we have here at San Pasqual Union is being a one-school district, being relatively small, and being autonomous. We have some flexibility in making those decisions that work for us and not a larger system. And so we'll know some more things as we kind of go through, but most of these things right now are pretty speculative. So we kind of know what our options would be if we were under social distancing requirements, or if there were mask requirements. But like I said before, day to day, week to week, things change, and I'm optimistic that they're changing in the right direction right now. The one thing that we really don't know, and we do anecdotally, but we don't know how all of you feel. And what I mean by that is we don't know how you feel about sending your kid back to school in the fall. And is it something that you feel safe? And are there certain things that would make you feel safer? So we sent out just the other night a back to school survey. And that back to school survey asked some questions that are along the lines of, hey, are we keeping you in the loop about kind of what's going on and where we're at and what we know and what we don't? How do you feel about sending your kid back to school? How would you feel about continuing some learning in the summertime? If so, what kind of model would you prefer? Right now, we're restricted to all distance learning. If that opens up over the summer, would you want to do something, your child come to campus, or would you want to do something that was all distance learning? Similarly, in the fall, we're optimistic that we're going to have the option to bring and to have quote unquote normal school when we return. If that's an option, some parents may not opt for that. Parents may still have some concerns. It's a scary time right now, and there's a lot of unknowns, and the fact that things change quite regularly and scientific knowledge seems to be interpreted in a lot of different ways. It's very understandable that there's some concerns and some fears. And so I'm hopeful that through this survey, we can sort of capture what our school community is thinking. And as we start making these plans, our plan A, B, and C for next year, that we're doing so with full understanding of where you're coming from. And so this survey is going out to all of our staff. It's going to all our parents and guardians. And we're encouraging our 5th through 7th graders to take it as well. Younger kids can take it too. It is geared in a way that has a lot of words in certain sections. So depending on the proficiency of reading levels, more than welcome to have younger students take it. And what it does is it gives us an indication as to what you're thinking. It's based on who you are. The only personal questions that they really ask about who you are you a parent or a student or a staff member? And then what grade levels are you associated with? And then that starts to give us an idea how to plan. Our next steps with this survey is we will not be having a coffee with a principal next Friday. That is when Mrs. Lee and I will be on our road trips out to our 8th grade homes. But we'll have it the following Friday. And by that time, we'll have our survey results that we'll share with you. And those survey results, like I said, will dictate some of the summer offerings that we may be providing, and we can talk to you about them as well. So, like I said, we emailed you your survey. Take a look in the chat. If you haven't seen the link, take you about 5-10 minutes tops. Mostly open, mostly fixed answer questions. click the bubbles, and then there's a few opportunities for you to elaborate a little bit. That kind of brings us to the summer piece, because school ends on Thursday, and people are like, is there going to be anything over the summer? And the majority of the people that I talk to are looking forward to the break. And so there's nothing mandated over the summertime. But a number of you I've talked to say, hey, I kind of feel this hasn't been perfect, and I'm looking to try to bridge this a little bit. So let me tell you what we know about summertime. We do have 2 confirmed programs for the summer. One of them is our summer program that's our extended school year, and that's for our students that are receiving services through the special education program. And then we also have a English learner support program that we're doing over the summer. So those are the 2 things that we've confirmed. We don't know the format yet. Our preference is to have those live if it's safe to do so, small group if it's safe to do so, but it will be delivered virtually if it's not. The other thing there's 2 items that are pending right now. One of those items is a summer school program that's designed for general education students that are not English learners or have disabilities. And the survey right now that we're sending out is going to kind of gauge that interest. We have some grant funding that we can use to fund a partial employee to run that, but we want to make sure that there's interest for it. So that's a question in the survey, so that'll be a contingent on that. And then we're also looking at the option of, can we provide, and this is more of a financial decision, can we provide either a summer library program like we've done in the past, where kids actually can come into the library, or can we alternatively, if we can't do that, do a drive-through? And so we want to continue putting books in the hands of, so those are the 2 things we're not 100% sure
on. He probably doesn't want to, oops, hold on, let me.
All right. That kind of takes us to the what about next year? And I won't go into a lot of detail. We provided some information on some different contingencies and ways we may group kids and all that kind of stuff. There's kind of 2 looming factors that are going to dictate that. One of those is health conditions and the associated restrictions. Like right now, even if we all said, let's bring kids back to school, it's a law to do so. So the health restrictions and making sure that we're following the guidance of our health officials and complying with what the state mandates are, that's the one big one. And then the other one is our budget that's going to dictate some things for next year. We're expecting a number of expenses to be generated through our kind of COVID-19 mitigation efforts to make sure that if and when kids are brought back, they're done so in a safe way. At the same time, we expect the worst, the most significant, the greatest cuts to public education that we've ever seen in the state. So those 2 things coming together create a little bit of uncertainty. And you're seeing some school districts that are putting those together as an absolute, meaning if we don't get money, kids won't come back. I don't view it that way. I view it as a challenge. I view it as a obstacle that we'll need to overcome, but I don't view it as a contingency plan. So we are still making plans to open up the same time we opened up, as long as we are permitted to do so and can do so safely. We are putting some plans together to be flexible. We talked to our staff yesterday, and we are looking at some tentative plans that have somewhat simplified and streamlined our schedules. So it'll allow us to be flexible, with student groupings, provides a little less adult contact to students. We're looking at some plans that keep students more fixed and adults moving and those types of things. So we're looking forward towards creating a plan that's good for kids that we can be flexible with. And that's one of the things that we really do well as a small school district. I'm really optimistic, though, that despite some of these cuts, we're going to be able to provide some things for kids as we move into next year. Our current plans look to have some cuts to programs. And some of these are some programs that have really been valuable here. We're looking at possibilities and likelihood of cuts to programs like our elementary science and music programs. But we are also looking at redeploying some folks and bringing back elementary PE. That became a budget casualty of this current year, but we're looking to bring that back for elementary students. I did get one question that popped in that was asking about, are there going to be changes to recess or PE next year? And I'm assuming that's more of a COVID-related question. And the short answer is it depends. And that's our lawyer's favorite answer. So whenever we ask our lawyer, the answer is always it depends. And it really depends on what the health restrictions are. The playground is the easiest and the hardest place for social distancing. We have the most room. We have the most outside. There's tons of places for people to go. We have 27 acres on our campus, lots of open spaces. So our playground, where we do our PE and our breaks, gives us lots of flexibility. That makes it the easiest place, obviously the most circulated air, all that kind of stuff. The hardest place is it's difficult to keep kids apart from one another in those environments. We don't intend to put kids into bubbles. We probably are not going to be giving them 6-foot noodle hats and all this kind of stuff. So that's going to be the challenge of how do we keep them apart in those environments. So like I said, PE is easy and hard. The other things to look at for that is how many kids are we allowing out at a time? So we're looking at contingency plans that have staggered lunch times and staggered break times and things that avoid kids lining up in big groups. We're looking at potential restrictions to either playground equipment or playground supplies, that kind of stuff. But a lot of that will depend on conditions and guidance. Even just this past week, for those of you who are following it as closely as I am, there was all this contradictory information on the virulence of coronavirus on surfaces. When this started out, that was the big thing. And we were looking at how long it stays on different surfaces. And now we're getting some mixed information on it. And the focus is really now shifting more towards airborne and face masks and distance and that kind of stuff. So we'll be very eager as this novel coronavirus gets more understood, as more medical information comes out, and we'll be closely following that guidance. So a lot of those things will really depend on what the conditions are. For next year, getting back to next year, we are also excited in our middle school. We have plans in place through Mrs. Reed-Smith to spearhead an arts integration program. We've been talking a lot about arts integration, which is essentially taking the arts programs and integrating it within your content area. So we're excited about having our arts integrated with our middle school language arts, our history, our science. So look forward to more information on that. And then I did have some questions about our middle school electives. We've offered middle school electives. We shifted that name to exploratory in recent times because we weren't having students actually elect those classes. What we learned, we've had that program in place for probably about 4 or 5 years now. And what we learned is that when you allow students to choose electives, that they'll take a wheel in 6th grade, another wheel in 7th grade, and a third wheel in 8th grade. And by the time they get to 8th, they've taken all the wheels. And if you give them their choices, they take their favorite ones in 6th grade, and they end up with whatever is left over for their least favorite in 8th grade, which seems to be a real bad combination. We'd rather have that mixed a little bit so that students are engaged throughout the process. So the answer to the elective question or the exploratory question is yes, we do plan on offering them. It's most likely going to be on our Thursdays as opposed to within our schedule during the week. Again, this provides us a lot more flexibility in how we staff and change depending on what the conditions bear. And we'll see a slight adjustment of courses. We're anticipating that we will not have as much staffing in middle school, and then as a result, we won't be able to offer as many courses. So you'll see a little change up on those wheels, but that's something we're working on right now. And then the final thing I wanted to talk to you about next year is we're really excited. I just spoke with the folks from the Safari Park. And the Safari Park, we've been partners with them for over a decade. And for the last few years, we've been working with them on our We Care program. And they have provided experiences for our TK all the way through our 8th grade students, both lessons on campus, going to the zoo, going to the Safari Park, and really putting in some lessons that integrate not only science concepts, but also looking at social awareness and conservancy efforts. And I talked to them recently, and they are completely on board continuing with our relationship. They asked me what format to do it. I told them I wanted all to be in person, so just fix all this COVID stuff and we'll get back to business. But they are flexible with us as to whatever we're permitted to do. So expect the program to continue to grow into next year. And that's a program that, to our credit, is one that's offered nowhere else. So San Pasqual Union School, partly due to our proximity and partly due to our history and our perseverance, have maintained a really positive relationship with a tremendous partner. And so we're really fortunate that we're going to be able to continue that relationship with them. So despite this uncertainty of budget and despite this uncertainty of what we're going to be permitted to do through health issues, we really have some good things to look forward to. So I'm very excited about some of these options. Like I mentioned before, our next coffee is scheduled for June 12th at 9:30. The topics on that will be some summer programs, the survey results, and the formation of a back to school task force. So I will be reaching out to you guys in a couple weeks once we get some survey results in, to have a mixed group of folks come in and say, here's what we're seeing from our health, here's what we're seeing from our government, and here's the voices that we're hearing from our community. And how do we put a plan in place that can balance those and have some flexibility? So we'll be talking to you about that task force stuff. Let me check the chat room area and see what questions have come in. There's a question asking how I am. I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you? Mrs. Lee commented that when you do drop off your device, we will give you a receipt for those devices. And if you are not returning your Chromebook, let Mrs. Lee know, and then plan on bringing those back first week of August. We're gonna have a return on August 3rd for devices that stay out over the summer. That will allow us to come in, update them, check for damage, and get them ready to redeploy for the school year. Anything planned for 6th and 7th graders? That's probably about the drive-through stuff. We still have slots that are open for the drive-through. I don't know if 6th and 7th grade teachers are going to do that. With your child's teachers, the information I have right now is I know what TK through 5 and 8th is doing, but I'm not too sure about 6th and 7th. Oh, looks like there's the answer to it. 6th and 7th are going to do class Zoom parties instead of drive-throughs. Where can I find the AXA report? I will put that in the chat as soon as we are done here. So I will add a link to that in the chat as soon as we get through these other questions here. There's a comment in here about social distancing from adults and not kids in other countries. Yeah, one of the benefits that we have is that there's a number of countries around the world that are a little ahead of the, and we've been able to look at some of the things that they've decided to do and not to do. And there's some learning opportunities there. This is a situation that is extremely unpredictable, and nobody knows exactly how it's going to pan out. But having the advantage of seeing some people roll into some of these models, because that comment was talking about the kids not being socially distanced. And I can tell you that schools were not built, nor were they designed to separate kids. They're actually designed to bring kids together. And if you look at a lot of the cooperative learning type things that we do, a lot of our physical structures, if you look to distance kids, you literally separate them out from most interactions. And you also create room environments that you're fitting about half the kids in very not ideal learning circumstances. So like the comment in there, I agree. I'm optimistic that we'll get to a point that we can keep them safe and have a more productive environment. There's a question that says, in the event there needs to be online learning, has SPU looked at other options outside of Acellus? We have looked at other options. Acellus is what we are planning on using at the time being. We have purchased that for our next school year. So we are planning on using Acellus. We are looking at options for our TK through 3 because we had not purchased anything for TK through 3. Part of that will be a financial decision and part will be curricular. So we are still open to resources, but we do plan on using Acellus for next year should we need distance learning. But part of this process has helped us learn how to do certain things better. And so there's some things that we would look to tweak moving forward. 8th grade delivery, is there a tentative schedule of delivery times? Very tentative, we haven't mapped it out yet. The start time will be 9 o'clock. The general route for that is starting up in Vistamonte, hitting Rancho San Pascual, moving out of the neighborhoods up into the San Pascual Valley area, heading out into the Escondido area, and then up into the Valley Center area. So there's about 75 kids on that list. We're pretty much going start to finish. I just don't know exactly how long that'll take. So we will be kind of running that route there. So that's kind of the plan. So if you are in the neighborhoods, you're probably looking at something between 9 and 11, I'm thinking. And if you are in the valley, probably a little bit after that, and then probably early afternoon for Escondido and Valley Center, unless we're very efficient. We might get you there quicker. There is the survey that I mentioned, in addition to the link being here, it's on our website as well. There was some information about the public library opening up for curbside. And so it looks like the public library is offering a curbside service. I'm thinking that Mrs. Carroll set the bar for that. So hopefully they've learned something from us. There was somebody who did not receive the survey. Yeah, get one out of the chat or the website, but I would also encourage you to reach out to me or Mrs. Wang, because if you didn't get the survey, it meant that we might not have your current email, because that should have gone out to all parents, guardians, and staff. Moving in to another question is, in the event there needs to be some online learning in the fall to supplement at-home days, has SBU looked in other options? Yeah, that was the one from earlier. Question about science and music for next year. Yeah, the thing that we are unlikely to be able to fund, and a lot of this is a funding decision from the state. We anticipate about $610,000, about 10% of our revenues being cut for next year. And so what that'll require us to do is to look to scale back on some of our programs. So there's a strong possibility, it's not a done deal yet because we're holding out that there may be some federal funding to offset it. Strong possibility that we won't be able to do our elementary science rotations or our music rotations. There's some concerns that we won't be able to do them anyway, as far as a structural program about moving kids around. But right now we're looking at those programs unlikely to be funded. We have been talking to our school foundation. There's another question in there about school foundation. They were really hampered this year by the school shutdowns and home shutdowns and economy dropping out. Most of the money that they raise that helps us offset those types of programs are raised at their gala, and their gala couldn't happen. And so they missed out on some really significant fundraising opportunities. They are still accepting money through green envelope donations. So they are accepting money through that. And we're gonna be talking to them about what is our kind of direct ask fundraising plans. If we aren't able to fund those programs, where do we want to target our money so that we can bring those back? Because they are not programs that are being cut due to lack of value. They're really, it's lack of fund them. And so that's the real challenge to that. So that is the tentative plans for right now. But we're, that budget will get finalized at the end of June, at the end of June. And like I said, I'm not optimistic about the budget. We are going to be chasing a lot of money. But the good news for us is that we have some healthy reserves, and I don't see it having as drastic of an impact on San Pascual as it will on most of our neighbors. We are looking at, yep, and then there is some possibilities through the foundation of alternate fundraising events. I think the foundation is really cognizant of the fact that we have a very generous school community, and some people are in positions to continue to give, and we want to encourage you to do that. And some people are really struggling through this, and we don't want to be insensitive to that. So that's the balance that will be, that you'll hear coming from the foundation itself. But we are looking at some direct ask programs that may fall outside of Green Envelope as well. There are some donation options through Foundation on their website. So lots of ways to give if that's kind of the direction that you're going. But the purpose of today's thing wasn't to try to take more of your money. It was to answer your questions and hopefully give you some guidance as to where we're at. Is there any questions? I think I've gone through the questions that were listed in the chat and the questions that were submitted in advance. Is there any other questions that you may have at the moment? Like I said, I know we're winding down, got some fun things for this last week. Hopefully there'll be some things that make your kids feel a little bit more connected. And I'm very, very hopeful that as we get through the summer, we'll be able to do these things a little bit more in person. But that's what we find ourselves in right now. Checking for questions. There was a question, do you need some help from us? Yeah, I would suggest if you're looking to work with the foundation that you reach out to me, or if you know Jody Kaler, our president, they would be very, very happy to take your help. We have a really highly functioning board of the school foundation, and a lot of smart people who are really vested in the school. Their biggest challenge is numbers. A small number of people on the foundation, a relatively small number of people on our PTO, and as we start moving forward and we start looking to supplement the things that are important, getting more people involved would be a wonderful thing. So feel free to reach out to Jody or myself, and we can kind of get you connected up to the foundation. And then there was one question about the 4th grade drive-through time. That's going to be on Wednesday from 2 to 3. So your drive-through, say goodbye, end of school year drive-through is 2 to 3 o'clock on Wednesday. So any other questions that you guys may have? Hopefully this gives you a good idea of kind of where we're at, where we're going. And then 2 weeks from today, I'll be back, share those survey results, and kind of tell you how our summer is shaping up, and then what we know about moving into next year. There is a question that says, in the event we'll be on, will Zoom sessions be the same, or there'll be a possible breakdown into smaller groups with more interactions? A feeling of disconnect. Yeah, that's one of the challenges that we've had. I've heard 2 different things, and we're really gonna have to evaluate how these online delivery programs work. One of them is, hey, we need to have more of these teacher sessions so that we can build these connections. And then the flip side of it is that I hear parents feeling, my kids have 4 teacher sessions lined up together, they're spending far too much time in this environment. So I'm kind of hearing those 2 things. So one of the things that we would look at on the task force is what this instructional program looks and how do we strike that balance. The other thing that I've been hearing is the teachers are finding that as the school year progresses, less and less involvement in these Zoom sessions. And one of the challenges that we have through them is the ability to mandate that students participate in them or how they participate. And the reason being is, if students are forced into a home situation, can we force them to turn on a computer so we can see inside their homes? And so there's some issues that tie into that. Doesn't mean that it doesn't become a tool that we continue to use, but we just need to be thoughtful of how much that becomes mandated and what the participation is and what the outcomes are designed to be. So we've seen a mix with our teachers between those Zoom sessions being more of an instructional session, like a teacher would stand up in front of the class. And as often, if not more often, we've seen those as opportunities for kids to get some connection to one another. Because the hardest thing that we found on this is we can deliver content through a computer. We can't deliver connections as easily through a computer. And so that'll be part of the discussions that we have as we move through. There was questions about are all classes having the sort of goodbye drive-through? Right now, I'm aware of nearly all classes. I believe nearly all classes are. Our TK through 5th grade are having the drive-through. The 8th grade is having the parade, and 6th and 7th are doing online parties through Zoom. Thank you for your kind words. Yeah, thank you very much. That was kind of where I wanted to end on this one too, is to return that gratitude. This has been a year that we wish to forget. We will be unlikely to. This is going to be a defining time for many of our kids and a defining time for many of us. And we have really asked you for a lot. For those of you who know me, I tend not to be shy about asking our parents to be active participants in their kids' schooling. From when I was a teacher to assistant to being the boss, I have never been shy about saying, hey, this is a partnership and let's bring you in and let's do this together and we're all going to, because we all have the same goals. This is a year in which that we have asked far more than has ever been asked of you before. And we are so impressed at how well you've stepped up and how well you've kept the focus on the things that are most important. And that's prioritizing your kids' well-being and making sure that their education doesn't overly suffer. The fact that you guys have been participating in these sessions, asking questions, providing options for solutions, and like I said, through that survey, kind of giving us some guidance on our next step. It's hard to take it when you don't know the rules. We do have some ideas as the direction we're going to go, but I think we've really built a strong base. And we've learned some things that we will do better. And so as we move through, I really wanted to thank how much you've been participating. And the two main themes that I've received from people when I've talked is, number one, there's a lot of gratitude to the work that teachers have done, and they really appreciate it. And there's a lot of hardship, a lot of frustration with this process. And more people express the gratitude than frustration, but I think that's because you guys are just really polite. But I think everybody's having a tough time with this, and everyone's affected in a different way. And for you to make sure that as hard as this is, we want to make sure that we put the needs of our kids right up there at the top, has really taken us to a point where they will benefit. And I hope that you guys can find some rest over the summer. I hope there's some lessening of things so you can actually do some of the things that your families have always done over the summer. But most importantly, I hope you guys keep safe. And I will still be available. I am not going anywhere. We'll continue to be working through the month of June, our office staff. So if there's some things that you need, continue to reach out to us, and enjoy next week. It's a real bittersweet kind of an end of the school year, but I do believe the teachers have some things that should be fun for your kids, and some things to kind of send it off in ways that, you know, the end of the school year is supposed to be fun. And hopefully there'll be some things that'll be fun for them. Last thing I wanted to mention is some folks had asked about report cards. We'll end up putting all of those in the parent view for you. So you'll see those, but they'll look a little bit different. I think I mentioned to you before, your TK through 5 will be mostly narrative comments. So you have a little description of how things went as opposed to those standards-based grades. And your middle school will have grades in them. You'll see letter grades for most classes. There was a little bit confusion on credit, no credit, and no marks. Just to clarify kind of what that is all about is we have adopted a do no harm grading policy, but we have also adopted a policy that we want kids to be accountable and work hard. And so we are looking at, for the most part, kids that have earned grades that are A through C, unless there's extenuating circumstances, those will be reflected. We felt that if kids were getting D's or F's, it was difficult to punish them for learning in very difficult circumstances. So on report cards, if a kid has a D in the grade book, it's likely overridden with a credit. Basically says that they completed the course. And if the child was failing that course, likely to be overridden with a no mark, which is essentially meaning they just didn't get a grade for that course, but we're moving kids forward. There was a little bit of confusion in that there are some classes that already have credit. I believe in the middle school, they didn't have enough assignments or to grade their electives, or I believe the writing class was in there too. So those are reflected as credit. Not to be confused with a D. Child didn't receive a D in those classes. Those are the marks for those classes. So those Ds get converted to credit just so that we aren't failing our students. So that makes some sense to you. If your child's grades don't make sense, let your child's teacher know. We are promoting our students to the next grade level, but understanding there may be some gaps in learning. So as we get them back and we start doing some assessments, more importantly than the grades, it's going to be where their learning's at and what we need to do about it. So if there's some questions about that, let me know. Oh, some more appreciativeness. So any other questions about anything else? All right. Well, I really appreciate your time. I will drop in that chat that AXA study that was asked for. So that'll be sitting in the chat. Anybody who has wants to take a look at it. Like I said, it's the administrative group that's talking about some plans for next year. Don't mistake it for our playbook, but it will be something that we will consider as we look to open up. But thank you all very much. It's really good to see you. I hope that you all stay safe. Like I said, I hope some fresh air and vacations are in your future. And I'll be back here in about 2 weeks. But in the meantime, I'll probably be seeing you at some of our drive-through events. And then, and if not, have a safe summer. Take care of yourselves and your. Thank you again for all of your support. All right. Okay, so if you were waiting around for that report, that is now linked in the chat. So feel free to check it out. Has some interesting information in there. But check out that report. And if you have questions about it, let me know. And like I said, we'll be reaching out to folks for task force information once we get the results of the survey. So thank you guys very much. It is good to see you. I will leave this open for a moment so that you can grab that link, and I'll shut us down in just about a minute. All right, thanks for joining us. Good to see you guys.
Is